She ran like the city itself was trying to swallow her. Rain sliced sideways across the neon signs of Manhattan, turning the streets into rivers of red and blue light. Elena Voss pushed through the downpour with her coat soaked and her lungs burning. Every step felt heavier than the last. 3 hours. That was all the time she had left. 3 hours to save her sister's life, or watch everything she loved slip away forever. High above the storm, in a penthouse that seemed to float above the clouds, the most dangerous man in New York stood waiting. Adrian Kane held a glass of whiskey in one hand and watched the rain streak down the glass like it belonged to him. Billionaire, CEO, a man carved out of ice and money and absolute control. He already knew she was coming. He had known for days. Elena stepped into the penthouse, dripping water onto the perfect marble floor. She didn't waste time with greetings or threats. She walked straight to the long table and placed a small black flash drive down between them like she was laying a loaded gun on the table. "I have everything," she said, her voice low and steady, even though her hands were shaking. "Your company, your secrets, your blood." Adrian didn't flinch. He didn't even look surprised. He simply reached out, slid a thick black folder across the polished stone toward her, and spoke in that calm, quiet voice that always felt more dangerous than shouting. "Sign it," he said. "Marry me for 1 year, and your sister lives." Elena stared at the contract. Then she looked down at her phone. The screen still showed the last photo of Maya in the hospital bed. Pale, weak, machines beeping beside her. Her throat tightened. For a second, the whole world narrowed to that image, and the pen sitting on the table. She picked it up. Her hand only trembled once. Then she signed her name. The lawyers called it a private marital agreement. Elena called it a prison sentence, written in cold black ink. 1 full year of her life, no public scandal, no walking away, no talking to the press, and absolute total silence about the files sitting on that little flash drive. Every page she signed felt like another chain locking into place. By the time the first light of dawn touched the horizon, they were already in the air. Elena sat alone by the window of the private jet, watching the city disappear beneath the clouds. Across the aisle, Adrian read through documents in complete silence. He never looked up. He didn't need to speak. The jet, the island, the villa waiting for them. Every single thing already belonged to him. The villa rose out of the cliff like something that had never known poverty or fear. Walls of glass and pale stone, infinity pools, an ocean as far as the eye could see. Elena stepped out of the black car and felt the warm island wind pull at her damp hair. For the first time, she understood just how small she had become in this man's world. Inside the master suite, she unpacked the only 3 outfits she had brought with her. Adrian stood in the doorway, with his hands in his pockets, watching her like she was already part of the furniture. "You sleep on that side of the bed," he said quietly. "You smile when the cameras are present. You do not ask questions, and you never, ever open that drive again. Do you understand?" That first night, she stood alone on the wide balcony, overlooking the black water. The contract still sat heavy in her hands. She whispered into the wind, "I hate him." The waves kept crashing against the rocks below. The ocean didn't answer. It never did. Days passed in almost complete silence. They shared a long glass table at breakfast. They shared a massive bed at night. They shared nothing else. Adrian worked constantly on tablets and calls. Elena existed in the spaces he left empty. The distance between them felt wider than the ocean outside the windows. Sometimes he made her walk the cliffs with him, while bodyguards trailed several steps behind. The wind tore at their clothes and whipped Elena's short hair across her face. He never offered his arm. She never asked for it. From a distance, they looked like the perfect couple. Up close, they looked like two strangers forced to share the same air. Then the storm arrived, with a violence that shook the entire villa. Thunder cracked so hard the windows trembled. The power flickered and died for several long seconds, before returning weak and yellow. Elena finally broke the silence that had been choking them. Why me? She asked. Adrian turned from the glass and looked at her for a long time before answering, Because you were desperate enough to sign and smart enough to be dangerous. She stepped closer until there was almost no air left between them. I hate you. He didn't look away. I know. The words hung there, sharp and completely honest. Something in the space between them cracked open, quiet and irreversible. That night, they still slept on opposite sides of the enormous bed. The empty space in the middle felt like a border neither of them was ready to cross. Elena stared at the ceiling for hours, while the last of the storm rumbled in the distance. The first public appearance came at a glittering charity gala in the city. Elena wore a black gown that made her look like she had always belonged in rooms like this. Adrian's hand rested on the small of her back as cameras flashed around them, a quiet claim that everyone could see. Across the ballroom, Cassandra Vale watched them with a smile sharp enough to cut. In the powder room, Cassandra finally cornered her. He'll get bored of the charity case, she whispered, voice sweet and poisonous. He always does. Elena met her eyes in the mirror and didn't blink. Then, you should be careful. Boredom is the only thing he hasn't bought yet. Later, Adrian pulled her onto the ballroom floor without asking. Smile, he murmured against her ear. They're all watching. She did. And for one dangerous second, the smile didn't feel like acting at all. It felt like something real trying to climb out of her chest. On the private balcony, the argument started the way they always did. And then it changed. His mouth found hers in the soft beginning of rain. City lights blurred into soft gold and blue behind them. When they finally pulled apart, Elena's voice was barely a whisper. This changes nothing. Adrian's eyes were dark and steady. It changes everything. What began as performance slowly became something neither of them could control. The careful distance they had maintained started to collapse one quiet night at a time. They stopped sleeping on opposite sides of the bed. They stopped pretending the space between them was still safe. In the dark, the rules of the contract felt thinner than paper. But when daylight returned, he was still ice. Professional, distant, untouchable. And Elena still had the flash drive hidden in her bag, a secret that refused to stay quiet. One night while the villa slept, she sat alone at his desk and opened the second folder on the drive. Blue light from the laptop painted her face. What she found made her blood run cold. 17 factory workers, dead, covered up. Emails with Adrian Kane's name written all over them. She sat on the floor of the study until the sky began to lighten. The laptop still open in front of her, the weight of those 17 names pressing down on her chest. When Adrian found her, the drive was still in her hand. 17 people, Adrian, she said. He didn't deny it. He simply looked at her for a long moment and answered quietly, It's not what you think. The story broke at 6:14 in the morning. By noon, the villa was surrounded by helicopters and shouting crowds. News anchors called Adrian Kane a murderer on live television. Protesters screamed outside the gates. The empire he had built was bleeding in real time for the entire world to watch. Elena turned to him inside the living room, voice shaking with rage and fear. You used me. You used Maya. You used everything. The argument that followed could have burned the villa to the ground. She threw the flash drive at his chest. I should have destroyed you the first night. Adrian caught it. Then, for the first time, he told her the full truth. The emails were forged. The real killer was sitting on his own board, and the only reason he had needed the marriage was to keep Elena alive long enough to prove it. Marcus Hale had been watching her for months. When they finally went to the hospital together, Maya was sitting up in bed. She looked between the two of them, took in the way they stood side by side, and gave a weak but knowing smile. Took you long enough. They stopped fighting each other after that night. They started fighting the world together. Late hours, shared screens, quiet conversations that no longer felt like warfare. One night, Elena found him asleep at the desk, head resting on a pile of documents. She carefully covered him with a blanket. His hand closed around her wrist without him even opening his eyes. Stay, he said. She stayed. The quiet that followed felt different, softer, heavier, like something important had finally been allowed to exist between them without a contract attached. Back at the hospital, Maya was stronger every day. She teased Elena without mercy and kept glancing at Adrian like she was already planning the wedding she knew was coming. That night on the balcony, Elena rested her head against his shoulder while they watched the dark ocean. No cameras, no performance, no black folder between them. Just two people who had finally stopped lying to each other. The board meeting was supposed to be Adrian's public funeral. Marcus Hale walked into the room smiling, already tasting victory, until the screens along the walls lit up one by one. Every forged email, every secret transfer, every body Marcus had buried under Adrian's name appeared in cold digital light. Marcus's smile died on his face. Elena stepped forward into the center of the room. Her voice was steady and sharp. You used my sister's life as leverage. You used 17 dead workers as a shield, and you almost got away with it. She looked straight into the hidden cameras. Not anymore. Security moved in and took Marcus out in handcuffs. Outside the gates, the protesters fell silent as the truth hit the giant screens. Across the chaos, Adrian looked at Elena and mouthed two quiet words. Thank you. Maya was sitting up in bed when they returned, stronger and brighter than she had been in months. She looked at her sister and grinned. So, are you keeping the billionaire or what? That evening on the private beach, they burned the contract page by page. The flames took the signatures, the clauses, the entire year they had sold to each other. When the last page turned to ash, Adrian took her hand. No more contracts, he said. Elena smiled. Good. I was a terrible wife on paper. They stood together on the cliff as the sun dropped into the ocean. No cameras, no journalists, no black folder between them.